The year is 922. We are standing on the muddy banks of the Volga River, deep in what is now Russia. But the men who control this camp are far from home. They are the Rus, Vikings who have traded the North Sea for the river roads of the East. Inside a large tent, illuminated only by a bed of dying coals, the air is thick with the smell of incense, sweat, and impending death. In the shadows, 6 warriors wait. They are not guarding the tent, they are waiting for their turn. A girl enters. Her name, according to the whispers of the camp, is Sigrid, but the Arab chronicler Ibn Fadlan, who watches from a distance, terrified and fascinated, will not write down her name. To history, she is a ghost. To the men in the tent, she is a vessel. Sigrid knows exactly what happens next. She has seen this ceremony before. She has watched from the mud as other girls, Slavic captives like herself, were elevated, intoxicated, and walked into the darkness. She knows that in the corner of the tent stands an old, broad-shouldered woman known as the Angel of Death. She knows the angel is holding a blade, warming it over the fire so the cold steel doesn't shock the skin. She knows about the rope, 1 cord for strangling, 1 dagger for certainty. Sigrid speaks. Her words are a broken mixture of her native Slavic tongue and the coarse Norse dialect she has been forced to learn during 2 years of captivity. Her eyes are glassy, dilated from a 10-day regimen of fermented honey and herbs designed to keep her compliant, to keep her walking toward her own end. "I see my master," she says, her voice trembling, addressing everyone and no one. "I see him sitting in paradise, and it is beautiful and green. He calls to me, let me go to him." The warriors do not care about her vision. The angel of death does not care about her paradise. The 4th warrior steps forward. The chanting outside grows louder, a deliberate wall of sound designed to drown out any scream that might escape the heavy fabric of the tent. In 10 minutes, Sigrid will be dead. Her body will be placed onto a ship beside the corpse of the chieftain who owned her. Torches will be thrown. She will become smoke, drifting over the Volga, vanishing into the cold eastern sky. We are told this was an honor. We are told she volunteered. We are told this was the glorious culture of the Viking Age. But Sigrid was actually one of the lucky ones. She knew when her pain would end. She could count the minutes until the blade fell. For hundreds of thousands of other women, the Viking Age was not a time of exploration and glory. It was a centuries-long nightmare of chains, ships, and silence. What the Vikings built was not just a trading empire, but an architecture of female suffering so sophisticated, so industrial in its scale, that chroniclers from Baghdad to Constantinople to the monasteries of England struggled to find words to describe it. This is the story the sagas tried to erase. This is the history of the silent cargo. Before we descend into the darkest archives of Norse civilization, if you believe that history should reveal the uncomfortable truths alongside the glorious myths, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It helps us continue to tell the stories that have been forgotten. And let me know in the comments, where are you listening from today? Now, we must leave the Volga and travel back in time and across the sea to where the nightmare began for the Western world. June 8, 793, the holy island of Linsfarne off the coast of Northumbria. Sister Aldred is pressing herself into the darkest corner of a grain storage shed. The air is thick with dust that coats her throat, but she dare not cough. Outside, the seagulls are screaming, but their cries are being drowned out by a sound Aldred has never heard before, the guttural roar of a language that sounds like stones grinding together. An hour ago, Aldred was in the scriptorium, copying the Gospel of John, surrounded by the smell of beeswax and parchment. Now she is surrounded by smoke. Through a crack in the wooden slats, she watches the beach. It is a scene from hell. The warriors are not just killing, they are sorting. This is the first thing we must understand about the Viking raids. They were not mindless berserkers. They were efficient, cold-blooded economists. Aldred sees her friend Bridget being dragged by her hair across the sand. Bridget was known for her auburn hair, which caught the light during morning prayers. Now, that beauty is her death sentence. The warriors are separating the women with the practiced eye of farmers sorting livestock. Group 1, the young and the beautiful, high value, destined for the sexual markets of the East or the harems of chieftains. Group 2, the strong and sturdy, destined for the fields of Scandinavia to grind grain until their spines fused. Group 3, the elderly, the infirm, the very young, waste. Aldred watches as the waste are dispatched with a casual brutality that stops her heart. They are left where they fall. Suddenly, light floods her hiding spot. A hand plunges into the grain. Fingers made of iron grip her arm. She is hauled into the sunlight, blinking, face to face with a man who smells of salt and old blood. He looks at her, not with hate, but with appraisal. He checks her teeth. He squeezes her arm muscles. He nods. Sister Aldred, who devoted her life to Christ at 14, has just become inventory. She is shoved toward the strange dragon-headed ships waiting in the surf. This moment on this beach creates the template for 3 centuries of trauma. What happens next creates the template for the Middle Passage, 700 years before the Atlantic slave trade. The ship is a masterpiece of engineering, designed to cut through waves and slide up rivers, but for the cargo, it is a floating coffin. 40 women are packed into a space designed for 20. They are thrown into the hold, beneath the rowing benches. For the first 2 days, there is no food. Water comes only when the North Sea crashes over the gunwales, leaving the women to lick the salty moisture from the oak planks that have been licked by countless captives before them. In the dark, huddled against strangers, Aldred learns the hierarchy of the ship. The warriors overhead know exactly who is below. They know which women are marked for the high markets and must be kept relatively undamaged. They know which are for labor, and they know which are for their own immediate use. The journey to Norway takes 11 days. By day 5, 2 women have died of exposure and shock. Their bodies are tossed overboard without a word. By day 8, Sister Aldred has stopped praying. God feels very far away from this wooden tomb sliding over black water. When the keel finally grates against the gravel of a Norwegian fjord, the division of spoils begins immediately. The raid leader takes the first choice. He takes Bridget. The other warriors chose based on their reputation and valor in battle. Aldred is claimed by a farmer named Gunnar, who needs hands for the harvest. She watches Bridget being led away toward the chieftain's great hall on the hill. In her naivete, she thinks, at least she will be warm, at least she will be fed. She was wrong. 20 years later, Aldred will die in that Norwegian valley. Her hands will be arthritic claws, destroyed by 20 decades of grinding grain on heavy stone querns. Her back will be permanently bent, but she will have lived longer than Bridget. Through the elaborate whisper network of enslaved women, Aldred eventually hears the truth. Bridget lasted 3 months in the chieftain's hall before she was sold to a trader heading east. She vanished into the vast river networks of Russia, swallowed by a system that stretched from the ice of Iceland to the silk bazaars of Constantinople.
To understand the true horror of this era, we must look at a typical morning after a raid. Let's transport ourselves to a Frankish village smoldering in the dawn light. The chieftain, a man the sagas might call Ragnar Ironhand, walks slowly down rows of 200 captured women. He is not looking for enemies, he is conducting an audit. He carries a staff, using it to lift chins and turn faces toward the harsh morning sun. He is an expert appraiser of human livestock. With a terrifying practiced efficiency, he sorts the women into 3 distinct categories. The first category, the engines of labor. This group includes the sturdy, the older, the women whose hands show the calluses of a lifetime of work. Marie stands here. She is 30, a mother of 4. She watched her husband die in their doorway yesterday. Ragnar looks at her broad shoulders and sees a machine. She will not be sold for pleasure. She will be sold to a household that needs a human mill horse. Marie's future is the quernstone. For the next 8 years, she will spend 16 hours a day rotating a massive stone disc atop another, grinding grain into flour. The motion is repetitive and crushing. It will deform her fingers until they look like gnarled tree roots. It will grind the cartilage in her shoulders to dust. She will die when her body simply breaks down, discarded like a tool that has snapped in half. The second category, the breeders. Isabel is 16. She is the daughter of a minor nobleman who tried to organize a defense. She is healthy, young, and has wide hips. Ragnar places her in the second group. Isabel's fate is perhaps the most difficult to speak of. She is entering a system where biology is a curse. Within a month, she will understand that she has been designated as a vessel for increasing her master's net worth. In the Viking economy, a slave child was interest on the capital investment of the mother. Over the next decade, Isabel will bear 7 children. None will be hers. As soon as they are old enough to carry wood or fetch water, they will be separated from her. The third category, the commodities. Then there is Marguerite. She is 20, with a beauty that transcends the mud and blood on her face. She possesses a striking symmetry that Ragnar knows will trigger a bidding war. She is placed in the special purposes group. While Marie is sent to the fields and Isabel to the breeding shed, Marguerite is taken to a separate tent. She is given clean water. She is fed meat. She is not being treated with kindness. She is being prepped for market. She is an investment that needs to be polished. Over the coming months, she will be taught basic phrases in Arabic and Greek. She is being groomed for the high-end export market, destined not for a muddy farm in Denmark, but for the silk-draped palaces of the Abbasid Caliphate or the marble halls of Byzantium. This was the industrialization of human suffering. The Vikings had developed a supply chain of misery that was precise, calculated, and global. They knew their markets. They knew that Frankish women sold well in Ireland. They knew Irish women were prized in Iceland. And they knew Slavic women, the root of the word slave, commanded the highest prices in the markets of the East. Every skill a woman possessed changed the math. Can she weave? Her value triples. Can she read Latin? She might be sold to a Byzantine household needing an educated servant. Does she know herbal medicine? She becomes a valuable asset for a household, though her healing skills will only prolong her own servitude. If the raid was the harvest, Dublin was the marketplace. By the year 852, Dublin had transformed from a small settlement into the western headquarters of Viking human trafficking. It was the hub of a wheel that crushed thousands. Imagine the auction block. It stands 15 feet high in the center of the market square, built to ensure that the hundreds of buyers crowding the mud below can see the merchandise clearly. Standing on that platform is Princess Orlith. She is stripped naked, shivering in the damp Irish air. Her royal lineage is no longer a shield, it is a marketing point. The auctioneer barks out her qualities in 4 languages: Norse for the sailors, Gaelic for the collaborators, Arabic for the traders from Spain, and a Pidgin Greek for the Byzantine merchants. He emphasizes her virginity, not out of morality, but because damaged goods sell for less. The bidding starts at 12 marks of silver. A merchant from Constantinople raises it to 15.
He sees her pale skin and red hair and knows she will be an exotic trophy in the East. An Icelandic settler counters at 18. He needs a wife or a concubine for his lonely farm on the edge of the Arctic. The gavel falls at 24 marks. The winner is a trader who specializes in the eastern route. Orlith will not stay in Ireland. She will be loaded onto a ship, taken through the Swedish river systems, down the Dnieper or the Volga, and eventually she will end her days in Baghdad. Dublin's infrastructure rivaled the ancient slave markets of Rome. They built holding pens capable of warehousing 500 women at a time. They had feeding stations, calculating the minimum calories needed to keep the stock alive without cutting into profit margins. They had medical inspectors whose only job was to isolate the sick to prevent an epidemic from wiping out the inventory. Consider the cold mathematics of the price list found in the historical record. A virgin, aged 14 to 18, 20 marks. The same woman, no longer a virgin, 12 marks. A woman over 35, 4 marks. A pregnant woman, 15 marks, sold with the promise of a bonus slave arriving in a few months. Skills disrupted this list. A woman who could illuminate manuscripts, a skill stolen from a nunnery, could fetch 30 marks. A healer could fetch 40. A singer, her price could double, sold to a wealthy warlord who wanted entertainment in his hall. During the peak trading season, 3 ships arrived in Dublin every week, each offloading 30 to 60 women. Let's track just one shipment to understand the attrition rate. 30 women loaded in Francia, bound for Iceland. On day 3, 2 women jump overboard. They prefer the freezing embrace of the Atlantic to the future waiting for them. By day 10, 5 have died of dysentery or despair in the hold. The remaining 23 are offloaded in Iceland. One of the women who jumped left a daughter behind in the hold, a 7-year-old girl. She watched her mother choose death. She will carry that memory for the rest of her life in Iceland, growing up as property, having children who are property, dying as property, on an island where the ocean stretches endlessly in all directions, a blue wall she can never cross. Once the sale was complete, the woman ceased to be a human being in the eyes of the world. She entered a legal state of living death.
We see this most clearly in Iceland. In the year 970, at the Althing, the great parliamentary gathering at Thingvellir, the law speaker stands on the law rock. He recites the Gragas, the Grey Goose laws. His voice carries over the crowd, defining the erasure of women with lawyerly precision. A thrall woman's body belongs entirely to her master. She cannot refuse any use of her person. Her children belong to her master. She cannot own property. She cannot bear witness. She cannot seek justice. These were not abstract rules. They were the bars of the cage. Consider the case of Thorstein Redbeard. He was brought before the court not for murder, but for property damage. During an argument over a property line, he had swung his axe at a neighbor and accidentally killed the neighbor's female slave, a woman named Asa. Asa had been captured in Ireland 5 years prior. She was a skilled weaver. She had 2 children. She was a human being. But the court did not see a murder. They saw a broken loom. They saw a dead sheep. Thorstein was ordered to pay replacement value, 8 marks of silver. No exile, no blood feud, just a transaction to replace a broken tool. The dehumanization went deeper. There was a custom known as the mourning gift. It sounds romantic. It was not. This law allowed his master to lend his female slaves to his guests as a gesture of hospitality. Refusal was legally impossible. The woman became a party fowl, passed between men like a cup of mead. Any child born from these knights was legally nullius filius, nobody's son. They belonged solely to the master of the house.
Ragnhild, a captive serving in a chieftain's hall, experienced this. Her master hosted a war council for 5 days. For 5 nights, she was gifted to the visiting warlords. 9 months later, she bore a son. Who was the father? It didn't matter. The child was inventory. The inheritance laws were an iron trap. Slavery was matrilineal. It passed through the blood of the mother like a genetic curse. If a free man fell in love with a slave woman, and it happened, he could not simply marry her. He had to buy her, and he had to buy any children she already had. The cost was often prohibitive. So we see generations of children growing up in the same household as their fathers, looking at them across the fire pit, knowing they share blood, but legally separated by an unbridgeable chasm. The father is a person. The child is a thing. One provision in the law seemed to offer a glimmer of hope, but in reality, it was a cruel mirage. The law stated, if a thrall woman bears her master 3 children who survive to adulthood, she may earn her freedom. Think about the cruelty of that math. First, the infant mortality rate for slaves was over 50%. Second, the children had to survive to adulthood while working in harsh conditions. Third, the mother had to survive 3 pregnancies and decades of labor. And finally, the master had to honor a deal he could revoke at any whim. In 4 generations of Icelandic records, fewer than a dozen women are recorded as achieving freedom this way. Most died trying, their bodies worn out by the dual burden of heavy labor and constant reproduction. Their children watched this futile struggle, learning the hardest lesson of all, that hope was just another way to break you. While the thralls faced the grinding horror of labor and anonymity, the high-born women captured in raids faced a different, more psychological form of torture. This was the strategy of absorption. We are at a wedding feast. The groom is Jarl Erik, a Viking conqueror. The bride is Brianna, an Irish noblewoman. The guests are laughing, drinking, and cheering, but look closer at the bride. She is wearing her mother's wedding dress, but her mother is dead, killed 3 days ago by the man standing next to her. The floor of this hall is still stained with the blood of her father and brothers. Jarl Erik killed them himself. Now he is marrying her. This wasn't romance, this was politics written in blood. By marrying the daughter of the local king he just executed, Erik legitimizes his rule. He claims the land not just by sword, but by marriage right. Brianna is a human seal on a legal document. She is 17. She is educated, literate in Latin, and proud. Now she is a biological weapon being used against her own people. She will bear Erik's children. Those children will have her eyes, her hair, and her royal blood, but they will be raised as Vikings. They will worship Odin and Thor. They will speak Norse. They will be the perfect conquerors, accepted by the locals because of their mother's blood, but loyal only to their father's creed. This happened everywhere the Vikings went. In Scotland, a Mormare's daughter was married to the man who strangled her father. She lived with him for 30 years. In Francia, a widow was forced to marry her husband's killer within a month of the funeral. In Saxony, a princess was wed to the warlord who burned her city. At the wedding, he wore armor still blackened by the soot of her home. The psychological warfare was absolute. Every servant in the hall, every surviving peasant, looked at Brianna and saw their defeat personified. If the princess sleeps with the monster, who are we to resist? But resistance did happen. It was quiet, it was desperate, and it was deadly. We have the story of Gudrun of the Hebrides. She was forced to marry the Viking who slaughtered her kin. For 10 years, she played the role of the perfect wife. She bore him 3 sons. She managed his accounts. She earned his absolute trust. She also learned his allergies. She learned which mushrooms grew in the dark damp of the forest, the ones that didn't kill instantly, but slowly, mimicking a wasting sickness. In her 10th year of marriage, she prepared a feast. Her husband died over 3 days, believing he had eaten spoiled pork. Gudrun inherited his wealth, freed her children from his influence, and lived the rest of her life as a wealthy widow. But Gudrun was the exception. Most women found that even the death of their husband brought no release. Under Norse law, a widow was often passed to the husband's brother or son. The cage merely changed hands. Modern DNA tells us the scale of this forced assimilation. When geneticists look at the population of Iceland today, they find a startling divide. The male lineage, the Y chromosomes, are almost entirely Norse, but the female lineage, the mitochondrial DNA, is over 60% Celtic. Think about what that means. It means the founding mothers of Iceland were not willing adventurers. They were Irish and Scottish women taken from their burning homes, loaded onto ships, and carried to the edge of the world to breed a new nation for their captors. And now we return to the banks of the Volga, to the tent, to Sigrid. The rope is tightening, the blade is falling, the fire is being lit. Sigrid is gone, but her ghost haunts the very foundations of the Western world. We have spent centuries romanticizing the Vikings. We name our sports teams after them. We make movies about their courage, their exploring, their liberty. We marvel at the beautiful jewelry in museums, forgetting that those golden brooches were bought with the profits of selling girls like Sigrid. We admire the lines of the longships, forgetting what was hidden beneath the deck. The Viking Age was an era of exploration, yes, but it was fueled by an engine of human trafficking that rivaled anything seen in antiquity. Sigrid, Sister Aldred, Princess Orlath, Marie, Isabel. They were not just victims, they were the fuel of the Viking Empire. Their labor fed the explorers, their sail funded the fleets, their bodies birthed the next generation of conquerors. They deserve more than silence. They deserve to be dragged out of the footnotes and placed where they belong, at the very center of the story. The smoke from Sigrid's funeral ship has long since faded, but if you listen closely to the history, beneath the clashing of swords and the roar of the waves, you can still hear them. If this journey into the hidden darkness of history has moved you, or if you think these stories deserve to be heard, please share this video. History is only forgotten if we choose to remember. Click the video on your screen now to uncover another erased chapter of our past. And don't forget to subscribe. The ghosts of history are speaking. It's time we listened.